President Muhammadu Buhari, within the week, signed the 2023 appropriation bill of a total of 21.83 trillion into law. President Buhari used the opportunity to also urge the National Assembly to reconsider its position on its proposal to securitize the federal government's outstanding ways and means balance with the Central Bank of Nigeria. He also asked the Minister of Finance to work with the legislators to revisit some of the changes to the budget.
The 2023 budget that I have the honor of signing into law today provides for aggregate expenditures of 21.83 trillion naira, an increase of 1.32 trillion naira over the initial executive proposal for a total expenditure of 20.51 trillion naira. As is customary, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and the National Planner will subsequently provide more details of the approved budget and the supporting 2022 Finance Act. We have examined the changes made by the National Assembly to the 2023 executive budget proposal.
We haven't done as we would have wished to do, but I think at the risk of sounding immodest, the 9th National Assembly has passed the MTF FSP at normal time, passed the appropriation bill, passed the finance bill, and of course we are very glad that we have been able to do that. Thirdly, this is the last annual appropriation bill that this National Assembly would pass and Mr. President would assent to, like he mentioned.
Meanwhile, the two arms of the National Assembly have reacted to President Buhari's assent to the 2023 budget.
While the focus is usually on the total projected amount, current and recurrent expenditure, the place to look is the actual allocation to critical sectors of the economy, which gives a clear picture of what the budget really offers. Well, some might argue that the percentage allocated to the current and recurrent expenditure says all there is to say about the budget. So let's begin there. The 21.83 trillion naira budget, with an oil price benchmark of $75 per barrel, has a recurrent expenditure of 8.33 trillion naira. The capital expenditure of 6.46 trillion naira is 3% of the total expenditure and lower than the 3.5% recorded in 2022. At 6.3 trillion naira, debt service is 29% of total expenditure, 71% higher than the 2022 estimate, which includes interest payment of 1.2 trillion naira for the contested ways and means.
In terms of debt management, again, I'm sure the audience here is familiar with our medium-term debt management strategy, which has some fiscal sustainability measures, including that public debt as a percentage of GDP should not be more than 40%. Domestic and external debt ratio should be 70-30. So at public debt to GDP, we have 22.8%. This is as at 2022, but this has since moved on to 35.33%. Once we, this is as of September, once we adjust to the ways and means that has already been approved to be securitized. So once we bring it in, this will take us to 35.33%.
A look at the critical sectors show that defense and security gets the lion's share with 2.98 trillion naira, followed by education at 1.79 trillion naira. Infrastructure gets 1.24 trillion naira, while health gets 1.15 trillion naira. The overall budget deficit is 11.34 trillion naira for 2023. The budget's deficit is to be financed mainly by borrowings. 7 trillion naira will come from domestic sources, 1.76 trillion from foreign sources, 1.77 billion from multilateral and bilateral loan drawdowns, and 206.1 billion from privatization proceeds.
The gap between revenue and additional financing and total expenditure amounting to 553.46 billion is being expected to be financed by additional revenue from spectrum fees and also from tax from the maritime sector.
Total revenue available to fund the 2023 budget is estimated at 10.4 trillion naira. 63 government-owned enterprises are to provide 3.87 trillion naira. Oil revenue share is projected at 2.29 trillion naira. Non-oil taxes are estimated at 2.43 trillion naira, while federal government's independent revenues are projected to be 2.62 trillion naira. Other revenues totaling 7.62 billion naira is expected to fund the budget as well. In summary, 22% of projected revenue is expected from oil-related sources, while 78% is to be earned from non-oil sources.
Recurrent expenditures are broadly in 4 categories, the most significant one being personnel costs. The truth is, currently, there's not much that we can do to bring down the personnel costs. We have actually been managing our recurrent budget as tightly as we can, and what we have in our recurrent budget is largely non-discretionary, and we do not have much room to cut. And that's why we keep submitting that the real solution is in growing our revenues, so we have a greater capacity to spend. It is because our revenues are so low that it looks like our expenditures are high.
The projected fiscal outcome in the 2023 budget is based on the PMS subsidy reform scenario, the concrete elephant in the room. In the 2023 budget framework, it is assumed that petrol subsidy will remain up to mid-2023 based on the 18-month extension. While this report is about numbers, the budget is much more. Beyond the figures, implementation matters most. Onyi Sunday, Arise News.
Well, as reported by Onyi Sunday there, the breakdown of this year's budget of 21.8 trillion shows defense and security getting the lion's share of 2.98 trillion naira. The budget has a deficit of 11.3 trillion. The breakdown of the 2023 Appropriation Act in Abuja, 8% of the revenue is expected from the oil sector, while 22% will be from the non-oil sector. The federal government also revealed that the incoming administration will inherit 77 trillion naira debt by the time President Buhari's tenure ends in May. We're now being joined by Dr. Nnaemeka Obiaraeri, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Taurus Capital, to take a look at these disturbing numbers. And great to have you, Doctor. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, this is a deficit budget. Total, a little over 21 trillion. Deficit of over 11 trillion. Revenue projection of just a little over 10 trillion. And government says they are going to borrow. And on top of it all, whoever is becoming president of Nigeria, according to Patience Onia, the Director General of the Debt Management Office, DMO, will be inheriting a debt profile of 71 trillion naira.
77.
Is it? Oh, 77.
Yeah.
77.
$176 billion.
70 trillion. So why will anybody want to be president of Nigeria if you are going to inherit an empty treasury and debt?
Dr. Abati, just like the anchor pointed out, the challenges we have in Nigeria is not even the issue of the huge debt profile that we have and the paucity of revenue. The challenge is what measures are we putting in place to change the scenario? You saw from the narrative of Ben Akabese, from the non-recurrent debt profile of 8.3 trillion, a huge chunk of it is personnel cost, which is about 75% of the recurrent debt. If you look at the real budget breakdown, the rest are non-debt recurrent expenditures that has to do with travels and other expenses like the maintenance of the presidential fleet, about 63 billion naira and all those stuff. Now, on the revenue side, a country as big as Nigeria should not be generating less than 54 trillion naira. South Africa, with a population of about 60 million people, last year they did about $126 billion. And Nigeria can actually do triple of what we are doing now if we look at the lines and cut out some of the leakages. I'll give you an example. In 2015, May to be precise, when Jonathan Goodluck handed over to Muhammadu Buhari's government, the daily crude oil output in Nigeria was at 2.3 million barrels, including the condensate. And if you look, most of the problem we had then was that as at February, even March 2016, before the Niger Delta militants went into the creeks, we are still pumping out that volume. And even at that, APC was even accusing the Jonathan government of stealing 400,000 barrels a day. Now, fast track to where we are today. We budgeted and projected that we'll be producing 1.69 million barrels a day at $75 per barrel, which is even less than the OPEC quota of 1.8 million barrels a day. What this government is simply telling us, they have no political will to stop the criminality in the Niger Delta region in terms of our crude oil resources. Obiaraeri told us gleefully before Arise, I think in one of your sessions, Arise morning show, that on a monthly basis, Nigeria loses about $1.9 billion worth of our crude oil resources. If $1.9 billion for crude oil resources are, if we plug that hole, and I don't see this why we cannot plug that hole, we will have at least $22 billion coming into our federation accounts every year that go into private pockets. And you know what baffles me is how we've not been able to plug this hole. We have a president who is not only the commander-in-chief, but also the minister for petroleum resources. Nigeria is the only country in the whole world, only oil-producing country, where crude oil, where we lose 700,000 barrels of crude oil a day. And crude oil is not like sweet. Nigerian crude oil, every crude oil has a DNA. The Brent, sweet Brent from Nigeria, if you see it anywhere in the whole world, there's no other crude oil that has the same DNA as Nigeria's. I don't understand why we cannot protect our waterways, protect our oil resources. This is the first time under Jonathan's government we never had this kind of bazaar. And we gleefully announce it, and we are packing up a debt of about 77 trillion naira, and we are handing it over. On the non-oil sector, Customs and Excise Department, based on studies conducted, can generate as much as up to $3 to $4 billion annually. We have leakages from that sector. Nobody's talking about those leakages. Nobody's blocking it. Why we are where we are today is because of the issue of unproductivity. One of the major source of export for other countries like Netherlands with a population of about 17 million people, land mass of about 44,000 square kilometers, generate almost about $120 billion annually from agri-exports. Nigeria, with the kind of land mass we have, demographics we have, and everything, if we put security in place, I can tell you there is no way. If you look at even the imports, we are going to be spending almost about $5 billion on food and food-related commodities. We'll be spending over 4.6 trillion naira paying for subsidy on petroleum products. These things are avoidable. If we had taken steps in the last quarter of 2015, when the market was down and they advised them to privatize those refineries, just like Obasanjo did in 2007, it was reversed. And they were advised to liberalize the market. If they had done that, and sold those refineries to deep-pocketed investors, by now we won't be talking about importing refined petroleum products, not to talk of even paying subsidies on it. They did not do what they're supposed to do. Of course, we are not here to lament. We are here also to provide solutions.
Okay, Doctor.
The next government that will come in they have loads of work to do. But if they can do the necessary things, basic things, commonsensical things, Nigeria is a blessed country with the right demography, with the right policy and monetary policy in place. This country will fly.
Okay, Doctor. Let's talk about the finance bill. The president did not give his assent to the finance bill. He said the minister should go back to the National Assembly. Manufacturers, other stakeholders, they are protesting that they were not consulted. And that the way that finance bill is provided is packaged. Increase in education tax, increase in customs and excise, increase in value-added tax, increase in company income tax, general increase. Manufacturers say, you will keep business with this kind of burden. Now the minister, at the breakdown, during the breakdown of the budget, said, oh, the finance bill will be signed in 4 days' time. Is it even possible to have an appropriation act without a finance act? Because this non-oil expenditure that they are a revenue source that they are talking about is from that
anchored on that bill.
It's from that finance bill, and yet you say you have a budget, then you don't have. You have not explained to us how you will get the money to fund it in real terms.
Dr. Abati, that is the paradox. Surrounding this APC government. It's shocking. I also want to give a breakdown. If you look at the tax to GDP of Nigeria, it's one of the lowest in Africa. Very low, less than 7%. In South Africa, it's about 2%. Even Egypt and Morocco, even nearer Ghana here. The challenge we have is not just the fact that this government, apart from the fact that they do not even consult the stakeholders, all they are after is what they will do, sell products, collect taxes, without even scientifically asking, how do we grow the economy? How do we support the SMEs, even the corporations, to be able to bring them into the tax net, enhance productivity, for you to be able to even have the revenue base to tax? The confusion is there for everybody to see. I just pray, because the prayer is not enough. Nigerians should be wise. Shine your eyes and get ready for 2023. February 25th, 2023 is a very important date in Nigeria. If we get it wrong, Dr. Abati, Nigeria will regress. But if we get it right, I said, people will say, what are we going to do with 77? The next government is going to suffer. Obasanjo, when he became president in 1999, had a similar situation. Nigeria was a pariah nation. Foreign reserve was about $5 billion. Out of it, $3.9 billion was encumbered. Foreign debt was about $32 billion that could not be serviced. Our crude output was about 1.6 million barrels a day. Whereas the oil price then was $17.34. Obasanjo did not sit down to lament. He went to work, appointed some of the best minds that we have in Nigeria. And within 8 years, he cleared that debt, put in place both institutional and physical reforms. That's all Nigeria needed to be going at 6.5% and left a reserve of about $43 billion. Most of the reforms we have today, the GSM revolution, the internet penetration at about 112 million Nigerians, was the work of Olusegun Obasanjo. So Nigeria, based on our population, based on natural endowment, based on the kind of giftings we have, based on the kind of human capital we have, if we have the right leadership, plugging the leakages, cutting the cost of governance, stopping the looting and criminality in our both physical and monetary sector. Today we have multiple exchange rate regime. The multiple exchange rate regime we have is what has contributed to the destruction of this economy. Before Buhari came into power, we had a flexible exchange rate system that was determined by the force of demand and supply. For whatever reason, they clamped on the market, made it opaque. And that was the first problem we had. JP Morgan Chase, it yanked us off their index. Bloomberg, it yanked us off. Before you knew it, $78 billion moved out of our economy. And Nigeria went into the first recession. So the next president that will take over on May 29th, 2023, we have his work cut out for him. If you can plug those leakages that takes $22 billion of our crude oil resources into private pockets, if you can plug those leakages that makes over $4 billion that should come through the customer department going into private pockets, if you can cut cost of governance where you will not be spending 63 billion naira servicing presidential fleet that even the president's wife and some of their country used to go for campaign, I tell you, if the right things are done, this country, no matter the ugly situation today, can rise and fly. We have everything cut out for us. Only thing missing is that leadership and the right political will to push things and achieve success.
Okay, Dr. Obiaraeri, with the passion that you have spoken, I'm tempted to ask you, who are you voting for? Because we seem to have these candidates. Who do you think will be able to do all of this?
Dr. Abati, I am unapologetically obedient.
Aha.
See, we need to take back Nigeria and hand over to the people. I can tell you, and I will tell you why. It's not as if the other candidates are not good. Let us be very factual here. The APC candidate, Bola Tinubu, if we had 1999 Bola Tinubu, I tell you, he has the right strong way then to do the right things. Today, Because of his health, you could see the cognitive impairment. You could see the evidence.
Doctor, you are not a medical doctor.
Okay, I'm not a medical, of course, Dr. Abati. The truth is, I am based on his health frailties. We don't want to move from Baba presidency to Kaka presidency. We have somebody to come and tell us the president said. You know, we want a president that we can hold accountable. We want a president whose structure is the people. So that if he misbehaves, just like Jonathan was able to do the little he did because Jonathan did not have any political bloc. He did not have even a majority group backing him. So he was able to dance to the tunes of Nigerians. We want a president we can hold accountable from day one.
He was president of the majority party in Nigeria.
Yes.
At that time.
Yes. Of course, the majority party in Nigeria then. Today, the majority party are the people. And the people, they want a new government in place that will help us take over our country. See, Dr. Abati, this country is blessed. I tell you, there's no country in the whole world that has the kind of natural endowment that we have. There is no country in the whole world that has the kind of human capital that we see. Go across the whole world, from Europe to America to Asia. You will see Nigerians making wave. What we are lacking is the right leadership built on the people's structure. Not the leadership built on political gangsterism. You know, I call them the political elitist gangsters. And this is what the P2B presidency is offering Nigeria. And we must grab it with two hands on February 25th, 2020. If we miss it, we are back 30 years. We may go back 50 years.
Okay, I hear you. But quickly, there's one other issue in this budget matter. Ways and means of over 22 trillion naira. The DG of the Debt Management Office is appealing to the National Assembly to securitize it and allow Nigeria to pay back over the next 40 years so as to bring down the interest rate from 18.5% to just about 8.5%. So this ways and means, why should my grandchildren be the ones to pay it back? What do they do with the money?
Dr. Abati, first of all, let us not miss one fact.
Okay.
Between the CBN governor, the finance minister, and the presidency, they broke the laws of the land.
Yes,
Section
38.
The CBN Act is very clear.
Section 38.
Yes, you are not supposed to give temporary credit to the government more than 5% of the previous year revenue.
Yeah.
Racking up 23.8 trillion naira, pardon my word, is criminal. Is flouting the law arbitrarily. You know, going to the National Assembly to request that they will securitize it for 40 years. Issue bond. That is simply what I said. Issue bond that will be repaid by Nigerians. It's not even. The first thing is to, who are those responsible? In a same country where things work, from Buhari to Emefiele to the finance minister, they should have been asked to resign. In fact, the National Assembly should move to remove two of them and impeach the president.
You want to impeach a president that has less than 20 weeks? Yeah?
Breaking the law.
Okay, finally, before I let you go, Doctor, how about the fundamentals of the budget? Because this is a question I've raised before. Is this budget even realistic? Inflation rate, they say, is put at 17.6%. Inflation rate today is over 21%. They say production of oil will be at 1 point something million barrels per day. Who is very sure about that? Exchange rate, they put it at about 436 to the dollar. Is that also realistic? Meanwhile, debt service to revenue ratio is 80.6. So, you are the expert.
Dr. Abati, if we do the right things, like I give you examples of how we can plug, we're not even supposed to be having a budget deficit if these guys are creative and the right things are done. I just gave you an example now that we lose $22 billion annually to high-level crude oil thieves. If we plug that hole, we will have, by the parallel market rate, that's about 16 trillion naira. By official rate, we have 10 trillion naira coming back into that budget. I gave you another source of revenue. Customs and Excise Department, by researches conducted, generates nothing less than $4 billion annually. Half of that money goes into private pockets. There was a consortium that sent a proposal that was approved by FEC on how they can digitize custom collectibles. That proposal was hijacked by those who have interest in Abuja because they didn't want it to see the light of the day. from NIMASA to MPA to other revenue generating agencies. Of course, I don't know about it. You saw the issue of JAMB. For 16 years, JAMB was collecting money and nothing was coming in. The last DG, the current,
no, he's still there.
The current professor,
the executive secretary,
generated almost about 52 billion. That is the same thing that is happening in most of the MDAs. The tax net today, Nigeria generates not less than 8% of tax to GDP. We can ramp it up to 15% if we have the right digital framework in place. Because the essence of digitalizing your activities is for you to bring about transparency in the way things are done. This budget assumption is wrong because one, first of all, crude oil revenue, we're talking about here. They said crude oil revenue, less than 3 trillion naira. When we know that if we, on the issue of subsidy, Dr. Bati, when Dr. Kachukwu was the minister for petroleum resources, we were told that our daily PMS consumption was about 32 million liters a day. Under Jonathan's regime, it was 47 million liters a day. Of course, there was a probe that was conducted by the National Assembly that saw clearly that that number was inflated by ghost imports. In 2020 February, DPR told us that our daily consumption, DPR, who is a government agency, stood then at about 38.2 million liters a day. Pakistan, that has land mass, that third road that is almost 4th out of Nigeria, the same demography, they have more registered vehicles, 24 million vehicles, we have only 11 million in Nigeria. They have more motorcycles and more generators that use PMS, consume only 28 million liters a day. But here in Nigeria, under Buhari, the figure moved from 32 to 66 million to 73 million a day, to 93 million liters a day, to 102 million liters a day, and nobody was queried. And you know, when you ask them, they will tell you, oh, it is smuggling. Dr. Bati, between Benin Republic to Niger, to Chad, to Cameroon, the 6 contiguous nations surrounding Nigeria, their total daily PMS consumption in a day combined is less than 10 million liters a day. And let us even assume, without considering, that 50 million liters of PMS is stolen every day. To transport it across the border will require 1,800 trucks. Super tanker trucks, if you line them on the road, they will cover about 27 kilometers of road. How do they pass every day and nobody traces it? So what we see clearly here is a Ponzi scheme. We asked them to privatize those refineries in 2015. They refused. Between 2015 to 2022, they've used those refineries to misapprove over 900 billion naira. $2 billion on failed turnaround maintenance program and reported losses. These are the same refineries that Obasanjo built in 3 years. One of those refineries, Obasanjo built, Gowon built the first one in 4 years. A president who was petroleum minister under Obasanjo, a refinery that was built under his supervision for 3 years could not be repaired in 7.5 years. And that is why we are where we are. So the next president will have his job cut out. Liberalize the market, put in place palliatives that will protect the poor. We've sent proposals to them on how they can put in place palliatives that even if PMS sells for 450 a liter, it will not affect the poor. By the way, the 1.3 million extreme poor Nigerians do not have cars, they don't have motorcycles, they don't even have generators. So what are we even talking about here? These guys are, Nigeria has become a Ponzi nation. Okay, well, subsequent government comes in place, put in place their own layer. Doctor, let us sort ourselves out, and God will not allow it to continue in 2023. Doctor,
thank you very much. This is like me saying, Doctor, okay, we are ready to come and be going. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you for joining us on This Live, this Sunday talk show.